Let me say a few words about some of the lies and distortions that President Trump made last night in his State of the Union speech. And do not worry, unlike Trump, I'm not going to go on for an hour and 47 minutes. A lot shorter than that. Last night, as you recall, President Trump stated, quote, "Members of Congress and my fellow Americans, our nation is back, bigger, better, richer, and stronger than ever before," end quote. Well, I do have to admit that Trump got it half right. He and his billionaire friends are indeed richer than ever before. Since he has been president, as a result of an unprecedented level of kleptocracy, Trump's family is now $4 billion wealthier than before he was elected, not to mention the $400 million plane that he got as a gift from the royal family of Qatar. Further, the billionaire class as a whole is doing unbelievably well under Trump. Since his election, billionaires have seen a $1.5 trillion increase in their wealth. That is rather extraordinary. The result, we now have more income and wealth inequality than at any time in the history of our nation. But while the richest people are doing extraordinarily well, surprise, surprise, here is what Trump did not talk about. Today in America, over 60% of our people are living paycheck to paycheck, with millions of Americans struggling to put food on the table, pay for housing, pay for health care, pay for child care, pay for education, and pay for the other basic necessities of life. 60% of our people live in paycheck to paycheck. Trump just forgot to talk about that. In America today, over 20 million households are spending more than half of their limited incomes on housing, and nearly 800,000 are homeless. In America today, 21% of our seniors are trying to survive on less than $15,000 a year. Try doing that. Try surviving on $15,000 a year. And nearly half of older workers have nothing in retirement savings. In America today, hundreds of thousands of bright young people cannot afford to go to college, and over 40 million are struggling with outrageous levels of student debt. In America today, we have one of the highest rates of childhood poverty of almost any major country on earth. Now, if that is the booming economy, the greatest economy in the history of humanity, if that's what Trump is talking about, God help us. Further, on another issue, Trump said last night that he wants to, quote, "stop illegal aliens and others who are unpermitted persons from voting in our sacred American elections. That cheating is rampant," end of quote, says Donald Trump. Before he start, I do find it interesting that Trump talks about our sacred elections. This is the same man who, after the 2020 election, was caught on the phone pressuring Georgia's Secretary of State to, quote, find 11,780 votes, end quote, so he could overturn the result. I guess that election in Georgia was not too sacred. This is the same man who provoked a violent insurrection on January 6th, 2021, in order to overturn an election that he lost and to stay in power. And despite more than 60 court cases to the contrary, he continues to claim that he won the 2020 election and that it was stolen from him. This man who claims that our elections are sacred has still not said that he won't run for a third term, despite the fact that it is blatantly unconstitutional. The Constitution limits individuals to 2 terms. But here is the truth about our elections. Despite 154 million Americans in 50 states voting in the last election, election fraud in our country is extremely rare. Even the conservative pro-Trump Heritage Foundation's database of election crimes listed only 24 instances of non-citizens voting in U.S. elections from 2003 to 2023. Hundreds of millions of voters in a 21-year period. 24 instances of non-citizens voting. That is not exactly a crisis. But that big lie that millions and zillions of undocumented people are voting, that big lie is the foundation of the SAVE Act, legislation that would effectively require every American to produce a passport or birth certificate to register to vote. So I just stop a moment. Do you have a passport? Some of you do, many of you don't. Do you have your birth certificate? Frankly, I don't. How are you going to get that birth certificate? Well, if you don't have a passport, you don't have a birth certificate, you ain't going to be registered to vote. That would disenfranchise millions and millions of people. It would disenfranchise millions of women who change their last names after marriage and whose documents no longer match, as well as millions of other Americans who simply do not have a passport or a birth certificate. And then there is the issue of immigration that Trump talked about last night, where he bragged, and I quote, "We are deporting illegal alien criminals from our country at record numbers, and we're getting them the hell out of here fast," end quote. Well, not quite the truth. The reality is that less than 14% of those arrested by ICE in Trump's first year back in office had violent criminal records. 86% did not. But the truth is, as we have seen on our TV screens, is that ICE is occupying and terrorizing American cities, rounding up American citizens and asylum seekers, kicking down doors without due process, sending 5-year-old children to detention centers, and illegally deporting people to countries to which they have never, ever been. Horrifically, we also saw the videos of ICE and Border Patrol agents murdering Renee Good and Alexander Preddy in cold blood. Last night, President Trump said that he is working to drive healthcare costs way down. Well, could have fooled me. Trump's so-called big, beautiful bill is throwing 15 million Americans, low-income and working-class people, off the health care they have through a $1 trillion cut to Medicaid and the Affordable Care Act. By the way, the purpose of that cut is to provide $1 trillion in tax breaks to the 1%. This year, as a result of Trump's actions, health insurance premiums have doubled on average for 20 million Americans in the Affordable Care Act. Now, that's a pretty strange way to be driving healthcare prices down and improving healthcare. Last night, Trump also claimed that he is ending the wildly inflated cost of prescription drugs like has never happened before, end of quote. Well, not quite. This year, the pharmaceutical industry announced that it would be increasing prices on over 850 prescription drugs in America. And despite what Trump says, we still pay, by far, the highest prices in the world for prescription drugs. Let me conclude by saying this. The American people increasingly understand that Donald Trump is a pathological liar who represents the interest of the billionaire class and who is rapidly moving our country toward authoritarianism. The American people also understand that when we stand together and not let Trump and his friends divide us up, and we saw this in Minnesota, and we're seeing this in states all over this country, when we do that, we can and will create the nation we know we can become. And that is a country based on the principles of freedom, justice, and democracy. Let us go forward together. Thank you very much.